Howdy everybody, this is Adam with Arcade Heroes for the first live stream for this channel in 2026. So welcome, and we're gonna talk 2025 because, well, 2026 we're only 6 days in, so not much to really talk about yet. Although there was a news story that we published this morning about Dance Dance Revolution and the upcoming release of Dance Dance Revolution there, sorry. Got multiple screens, so looking at different things. But this video is brought to you by the letter T for Touch Magics. As they have 3 new games that they showed off at IAPA 2025 and are available now, which are, you see here on the big ad that's at the top of the site. And so Pickleball Toss, Boxed Up, and Treasure Chest, which are not video games, but they are redemption games. They're still relevant to the industry at large. And so I want to thank them for their support, as well as those who are other advertisers on the site. But in particular, Touch Magics, wanted to give them a shout out in their latest stuff. So, as far as the year in review goes, I'm just going to go through this post that we published last week with discussing the all the different news items, major news items from the year, top 10 posts and such. Last year was actually marked the 19th, we're now in our 19th year, so once, I think it's December 3rd, hits for Arcade Heroes, will be 20 years old. And so that'll be something. But either way, it's aside from it being a little bit surreal and making me feel really old, it's cool that we've been around this long. And I am thinking about trying to make some major changes to the site. I mean, there are some issues that the site has had, such as with comments and such, that need to be fixed. But also been thinking about ways to make something, give it a new look, perhaps at some point this year. We'll have to see if we can tie that up with the actual 20th anniversary or not. That's a little bit tough just because that'll be right after IAPA 2026, and rolling out major changes around then might be unwise, but we'll have to look and see and just see what we can afford to. But do want to thank everybody for their support of the site, of the channel as well. While we do use the site as the anchor for things, the channel has probably outgrown the reach of what the blog has done, which makes sense. Just given YouTube's reach overall out there into the gaming world, and I think it was written here that we added somewhere around 2,000 new subscribers to the channel. So thanks, and thank you for following the channel, and feel free to always ask if there's some extra stuff you'd like us to cover. I mean, sometimes I do get into arcade history and things of that nature. It's not always just brand new arcade stuff. However, it's still good to keep our main focus in view there. And also, by the way, I'm at my arcade right now. I had to start a little bit later today because it was slightly busy when I opened today, and then just suddenly got a little slower, so I may need to leave the desk here and go take care of anything, or I have teenagers wandering around, because today's the last day here where I'm at that school is out, and so I'm sure there's plenty looking to go out and do something before they have to go back to school. But another thing that did mark it did overshadow things to a degree right around our anniversary last month was the sudden passing of Nick Thorpe, who is also known as Heavy Electricity. Many of you might know him or have known him through his work at Retro Gamer Magazine, which he did. He actually wrote for Arcade Heroes between 2008 through 2012, and then after leaving Arcade Heroes, started writing for Retro Gamer Magazine, and he did that all the way up to his death. Now, I have still not heard what was the cause of his death. But either way, sincere condolences to his family. It was very sad news. And also on top of that, there was some other news that this would still be 2025, but we didn't hear about it until the other day. Replay Magazine had posted that David Rosen, who was one of the original co-founders of Sega. Now, the whole history as to the founding of Sega is somewhat murky and complex because from what I understand, David Rosen, he was serving in the military, and he over in the U.S. military back in the 50s, and that's where he founded it. Hey, how's it going? Well, good, good. Oh, you're fine. I'm just streaming, but it's all right. People know that I have stuff to take care of, but let me find my mice. Did the monitor go out too? What's that? Did the second monitor go out? It shouldn't have. It might be that it was turned off. So maybe check the lights are all on. Be right back. If so, this is the first I've heard. Which would not be good. How much would you like to do?
How much, like, how does it work?
You tap to buy a certain number of tokens. Token prices are right there.
And how many tokens do you need for, like, a machine?
Depends on the game. Between 1 to 4 tokens, and it'll say on each game how many they need.
Can I get 20 tokens, please?
Okay. Sorry, this just needs to reboot. Yeah, let me find that.
Take a look at the coin drop. Also, if you've got a token, unless there's already one in the bucket.
There should be a bunch in the bucket, because like I said, they fall through just fine, but for some reason, which I've never seen any other game do before, they just like drop straight through, and it doesn't activate the switch, but you use your finger, it works just fine. And it's tried 2 different switches at this point, and nothing. Sorry, one more second here. Now, if there's anything that's off that you guys want to play, let me know. I can turn it on. Okay. You said 20 tokens, so $5.
Yep.
Go ahead, tap there. All right, here you go.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome. Thank you. All right, sorry everybody. That was quite a pause. But so what was I talking about? David Rosen, I think. Yeah, there's some interesting history there. But either way, regardless of how things got started at Sega, he was the chairman, CEO of Sega for many years. When things went south around the time of the game crash. Like, people like to say, well, it's the game crash mainly affected North America, which is true. However, it still had some ripple effects out into the rest of the world. There is just no way to not have that happen when, you know, your major companies all collapse. And yeah, and so like Sega Gremlin was one of those companies, and there was like a management buyout and things of that nature. But that still worked out in the end to do other things. Which one specifically? Like the motorcycle, or are you talking about the one way in the back, like Batman? Okay. Yeah, that'll take several minutes to start up, so you might want to find something else to play while that goes. Maybe I shouldn't have done the live stream today. I was having some feelings. But anyways, rest in peace to David Rosen. He died on Christmas Day, but we didn't hear about the news until a little bit after that. But still, his work at Sega helped make the company what it was. And if it wasn't for him, then Sega might not have existed at all. And so... yeah, rest in peace to him, rest in peace to Nick Thorpe. And yeah, we'll move on from the sadder news of those things. And let's start with some business talk. Sometimes you can call this like state of the industry. there used to be a magazine called Playmeter Magazine, which actually, if you go looking through them on archive.org, you can find stuff about David Rosen throughout them. I mean, he's not in every issue, and like in the 70s and the 80s and such, but you know, he shows up once in a while. But Playmeter, they went defunct years ago, but they used to do this state of the industry report. Back when I was looking at starting an arcade, it was super helpful in designing the arcade and getting statistical data, just because, as I've been frustrated about many times over the years, it's very difficult to get anybody to talk about any data here in this industry, oftentimes because they figure, oh, you're just going to take my business, but it's like, no, I'm in a different state. I just need to know some stuff about how things go in your state. Now, of course, it is more useful if you can get data within your own state to be able to ascertain what sort of business you can expect to see, but it's just not always possible. But unfortunately, with the Playmeter not around anymore, I'm not sure how they gathered a lot of that information, but again, it was still super helpful. You could look up some of the old Playmeter State of the Industry reports, and it would show things like how many arcade locations were out there and what are called street locations. Street locations would be like restaurants and gas stations and rest stops and movie theater lobbies and places like that, where the main business is not actually an arcade, but it's ran by what's called a street operator. And I remember in one of their last State of the Industry reports, they had something like well over 100,000 street locations. And something like 3,000 arcades or more, around 3,000 FECs as well. But yeah, where I operate an arcade myself, as you well know, since I've been sidetracked by a few things here. I've mentioned how my business goes in various videos, and if you've been tracking that, you've probably noticed the past few years things haven't been great. Unfortunately for me, 2025 wasn't great either. So it's like about the middle of 2022, I started noticing a slight decline in earnings compared to the year prior. And now, of course, 2021 and 2022 were just weird years after what happened in 2020. And prior to that, 2019 was my best year ever. Did you figure it out?
Yeah, I got it figured out.
Oh, sweet.
You want to continue?
Sure. Be right back.
One problem fixed, another discovered. monitor's taken care of. Like I said,
Okay.
the backlights for them are coming in. I'll probably do the backlight swap here.
Okay.
So I'm gonna bring
Yeah, that
my
makes
own.
sense.
I'm gonna bring my own table.
Okay.
We'll
Yeah, I think we have a
disassemble
table too
everything.
if you needed one,
Okay.
but
We'll disassemble everything. We'll get it replaced and test it here.
okay. Sounds good.
I'm really, really sorry about that.
That's okay.
No, I cannot describe to you how. Like, it's funny because the guy that has the spare monitor, I was like, hey man, can you get that shipped out for me? He's like, can't you just wait until the end of next month? And I'm like, no, I'm routing my game, dude. I'm not making money, and it's taking up his space. So I gotta get this done. He's like, oh, why didn't you just say that? I have been saying that, dude.
You weren't listening.
You're not paying attention.
Right.
So
right.
that's coming, plus the backlight. So I'll end up having a spare monitor, which is
Okay.
always good.
Yeah,
Always
yeah.
good.
Especially given what's its behavior so far. So.
I was planning on replacing both backlights anyway, so it's good to know that they're both dead.
Right. Yeah. It's better that that happens now when you're still and that you ordered enough, as opposed to it happening as soon as you leave after you fix the other one.
I didn't bring my tools with me, and I was like, oh man, I should have brought my tools so that I could at least pull the monitor out and get like the frame situated.
Mhm.
Now both of them
Are dead. So.
what a pain, dude.
Yeah.
I love arcade games. They give me more ulcers than anything else.
Right. Yeah.
All right.
Same here.
I'm gonna head out. I've got a doctor's
All right.
appointment, so
All right. We'll
I'll
see you.
keep you posted.
Okay. Cool. We'll see you, Nick. Have a good one. So yeah, speaking of business, at the sometime last month, I got a My in the finale version, not DX, and that was the owner of the game. He just came in to look at it. He was going to try and fix it because it had two problems. One was one of the monitors on one of the sides just stopped working. Like it was working before he put it on the truck. When he brought it here and set it up, it wasn't working anymore. And then a few days after he had set it up, suddenly it started working. But one other issue was that it wouldn't take coins. Like the coins, I could get them to go through all the way. However, for some reason, they would not activate this coin switch. And I bent those switches every which way and everything, and it just wouldn't work. I tried getting a different roll down mech, still didn't work. But when he came in today to look at that specific problem, now the other monitor's dead. And so it looks like the LED backlights are burnt out on both of them. So that's part of the fun of operating an arcade is, and actually that's been one of my problems this past year in particular is like right now I have a high number of games that are out compared to what I usually would have. And so like my Minecraft Dungeons is down, now the My is completely down. Still need to get one gun fixed on Aliens. My Big Buck Reloaded is down. Even though I just spent $1,500 on repairing it back in October. So that's extremely frustrating. My Blazing Angels is out. One of my Nirins is out. My Time Crisis 2 is out. My World Tour Foosball table is out. So, yeah, it's just, well, all these things are starting to stack on each other. And the problem is all of these things were out during December, which was the busiest time that we had last year, I think. I need to double check on the numbers. To be absolutely certain, but yeah, I think as I was talking about before I was pulled away was that the decline it seemed to start in 2022 and got a little worse in 2023 and a little worse in 2024 and a little worse in 2025, and so it's just been a continual decline. I also had to complain about this before where in the past, pre-2020, business would always follow some sort of pattern. Like there were certain months where you would always expect, even if it wasn't the exact same number, even if it was off by 10 to 20%, it would still be in the same kind of realm, if that makes sense. Almost like if you were to plot it out on a graph, it would look like a wave throughout the year. But yeah, after 2021 or from 2021 on, nothing's followed a pattern, and it hasn't always made sense. And sometimes months that should be one of the best months of the year aren't, and that's really frustrating. But yeah, that's part of what I've been seeing, but there have been other arcades out there that I've been hearing some similar things from as well. There's a group on Facebook called FEC Operators, where if you operate any sort of arcade venue, FEC venue, can go and talk there, and a lot of people there have been saying very, very similar things. Now, to be fair, there have been some people jumping in and saying that 2025 was their best year ever. I'm not really sure where they were at. But I do remember, I think it was Replay Magazine had done some surveys at around the end of 2024 where they were asking their readers, is business the same, better, or worse compared to last year? And I think it was something like 60% had said it was worse. And then I can't remember the percentages exactly on better and the same, although I want to say the same was more people. I didn't see any surveys like that for last year, so I don't know for certain, like from a scientific perspective, where everybody's landed at. But there is another trend that seems to be happening in conjunction with these challenges that we've been seeing in the arcade business, and that is the home console business has not been doing great. I guess I should have had the link ready to go, but there was something about, I think this past November was one of the worst hardware sales periods that has been seen for consoles, I think, since the 90s, which actually tracks with another thing where last October was one of the worst months for movie theaters in Hollywood history, or at least since the 1990s as well. And so there's just been this steady decline in entertainment, out of home entertainment stuff that has been experienced, as well as, I guess, in-home entertainment in that sense, given that consoles. And so, yeah, it is looking like, from all the numbers that have been shared out there in the home console business, that there is something of a crash going on. And I think that's kind of bleeding out into the arcade business as well, and other forms of entertainment. And now maybe it's an actual shift where just everybody's doing everything on their phones and doing everything at home. In phones you can get free games and such, and you just have to watch stupid ads or ads about games that don't exist, and then you can play that game or whatever. And I've heard companies like Nintendo and others complaining about how mobile gaming really disrupted the whole business model for the rest of the market and how things used to work. But are we in a crash for the arcade industry? I don't know. It's hard to say. It's one of those things where it's like, if I was an arcade operator in 1983, it might have been hard to tell, at least at first. And then in 1984, it might have been a little bit easier to tell how things were going. But a crash, these happen. It's happened in the arcade industry, like I just mentioned, 83, 84. There was, I think, like 1999 through 2004 was a period that a lot considered to be a crash period for arcades. You had a lot of arcade manufacturers closing up shop, a lot of arcade locations closing down. Now, on X, I had seen, I think it was Arcade Repair Tips, shared a couple of stories where some places where, as far as I know, I don't know why they were talking about arcades. It might have just been, I don't know if they were doing AI-generated content or somebody genuinely opining on the arcade industry and such. But one of the stories was how to bring back arcades by using retro. And then the other one is an article about how arcades are in decline because things like CRTs are dying. Now, I stated on X that to me makes no sense. There's like no science there. There's no data there to support that claim. Because as I've seen throughout operating an arcade for almost 18 years now, retro never makes money. I mean, it's absurd. Now, I guess I understand why the public perception about retro is that it makes tons of money because, well, Arcade 1-Up was popular, or Arcade Archives is popular. But I think it was Sega Ages. There was a time where they used to publish how many sales they got on things like the 3DS and stuff, but then they stopped doing that. But from what I remember, a lot of the sales numbers on a lot of the Sega arcade ports, which were, pretty perfect, perfectly done ports, were not that great. They sold like 18,000 units. Now, if you looked at the hype online, you would think that it would sell 800,000 units in 24 hours or something, because the way people talk so glowingly about some of these classics. But then when push comes to shove, it's like, not really enough to warrant the release. And if I'm recalling this correctly, this is why Sega stopped doing the Sega Ages stuff, but I could be wrong about that. But yeah, there's been other factors too. It's like when it comes to home consoles, there have been a lot of major flops from AAA studios where these games are extremely expensive to be producing, and then they make nothing. There was the infamous example of Sony's Concord. I don't remember what the numbers were on that, but for them to give up on that pretty quickly, that was almost a little bit shocking. There was. I didn't play a lot of these ones, but like the new Dragon Guard, was it Dragon Guard? I can't remember. There was several games. Again, these names are escaping me, but just high-profile flops. Those are never good for an industry which is made up of a bunch of different businesses. As things are, it's basically shaking things out. And as Ted mentions in the chat, yeah, you also have like mobile gaming's littered with crap. And I mean, to a degree, this is what happened back in 1983 with the very first game crash, was that, I know some dispute saying that the crashes in the arcade industry and the console industry should be considered separate, even though they really did happen simultaneously. And I do think that they were affected, they both affected each other, and maybe not in every single aspect, but in some aspects they did. Arcade ports coming to consoles all the time, sometimes coming out before the game had even hit the arcade. Even if it wasn't an arcade perfect port, if you didn't have a lot of money, but you could afford like a $25 game, which at the time, a lot of games were around $25, $30 instead of $60. Now, of course, inflation changes things, but you'd still be happy to do that as opposed to maybe scrounging a bunch of quarters together at your local arcade. And it did have an effect. Jersey Jack, the guy who runs Jersey Jack Pinball, wrote an op-ed in a Playmeter magazine back in 1982 that I came across when I was doing some research. And he was complaining that he just spent thousands of dollars like on a Zaxxon and a Donkey Kong machine, and he saw the Atari 2600 versions at a shop there. And he was very upset about that because he's like, why are these manufacturers not giving us any time to recoup our investment? They're already putting these things out on home. There was, of course, Donkey Kong on the ColecoVision as well, and things like that. But I guess I can't remember where I was going with that tangent in the first place. Either way, every crash has its. There's things that there's different factors that go into each market crash, but it doesn't mean that gaming is dead, and it might change to some degree. I think with the arcade industry, one very obvious effect that we've seen is the decline in VR. And I brought this up with the trade shows in particular, but if you go back into previous Arcade Heroes coverage of shows like IAPA and Amusement Expo, it used to be that it was a little bit hard to do all the arcade stuff as well as all the VR stuff. But I also had noticed that when I had post stuff that was just about VR, it usually didn't get a lot of traction. And so that's where I was just like, well, it doesn't seem like anybody's really interested in this, so I'm not going to spend a whole lot of time on it. Or I would just gather it all together as best I could and such, and then just cover it that way as multiple products in one. But I remember counting how many companies had VR in their tags or in their name and such. And I can't remember which year it peaked. It might have been 2019, might have been similar in 2021, 2022 as well. But I remember there being around 80 companies that had some sort of VR product. that they were touting. And for a lot of these companies, it was the only product that they had. But now we had less than 10 at the past IAPA. Maybe it was around 10, somewhere around there. But that's a pretty huge decline. And without getting too much into the weeds on it, because we got other things to discuss here. Oh. Ones? Yeah. Here you go. But I consider, I know this is going to ruffle some feathers out there, but I can kind of consider the VR arcade trend to be similar, not exactly the same. I will give the VR stuff kudos for outlasting this other technology I'm going to compare it to, but it's kind of the modern Laserdisc. And that's because back, if you look through old magazines, arcade magazines like Playmeter and Replay Magazine from 1983 or so, when Laserdisc hit the scene, it was the savior of coin-op. It was going to turn the fortunes around, and it actually made things a lot worse because Laserdiscs were super unreliable. All the technology on it broke. Cinematronics almost went bankrupt just in replacing all of the Laserdisc drives and Dragon's Lair machines. And other companies like Stern Electronics and Universal were the guys behind Mr. Do. Their arcade divisions went bankrupt from all the money they spent on just trying to make a single Laserdisc game that didn't sell. Hi, how's it going? If there's anything that's off, it's just saving power. I can turn anything on. And so again, VR is not exactly the same. VR has outlasted Laserdisc by quite a bit, but there have been a lot of companies that they spent a lot of money on VR and it went nowhere for them. Now, that hasn't been true for everybody. There have been some that have made it work, like LAI Games. They have the Ubisoft All-Stars VR. There's the guys who make that VR foosball table soccer game, Kanoa. It's called the Coliseum Soccer VR. They're still around. They were at IAPA actually, and they've been around for a few years or several years. And of course, Raw Thrills has their King Kong 2 and their Godzilla VR. Although they just did release a non-VR version of that, and so. And there it is on the screen right there. Like Top Gun doesn't have a VR version. Like I thought that they might do a VR version of it, but seeing that they didn't, I kind of wonder about it. And so, to me, it doesn't seem like VR lived up to its promises. And some of those promises were absurd. I remember one person in particular was proclaiming that there would be no more flat displays. Everything would be wearable. You would be wearing a display on your face. And, if VR headsets were $10 a pop, maybe. But it's just like, there's still not, that doesn't work for every application out there. So I've always been skeptical of that claim. But regardless, right now, VR is not saving any industry. And in fact, on the home side, I think it's been even worse, and it's also shown the effects there because Sony has given up on PSVR 2. I haven't heard anything about Valve really supporting the Index anymore. I know Meta has burned an absurd, ridiculous, silly amount of money on chasing VR, and it's like, what do you guys got to show for it? Really? That's it? And, like $60 billion, $80 billion and, 20 million sales or something like that. So, I'm not saying VR doesn't have some places where it could actually do well and do some things, and that there might be certain game experiences that are better that way, but that it should replace all flat panel displays and become the de facto standard. If it's going to happen, it's not now. But that's also been the promise. Like every time VR has come along, it's had a promise like that, and it falters. Just wearable tech doesn't work for everybody. But anyways, I said I shouldn't spend too much time on this. So now 2023 and 2024 for me at my place, that it's one of the issues that I had was just I had racked up so much debt trying to stay in business, but also operating 2 locations in 2020 through 2022, that I didn't buy anything new at all. The only new stuff that I bought was like exa-Arcadia games, because that's the only thing that I could really afford. And that's one reason why I like the exa-Arcadia platform, is because almost all their games are under $2,000, and since I already have the game cabinets, makes it a lot easier to invest into a brand new game and do a refresh here. As opposed to buying something else new. And I guess this is one of those things that I got sidetracked on, is like, what's the culprit for a lot of this decline? In my opinion, it's been inflation. Just because me as a consumer out there too, I live in the same economy that the rest of you do. It's been extremely frustrating to go to the store and you buy something and it's like, wait a second, I remember this not costing $50. It used to be $10. I remember, I think it was 2024, went to Costco and just bought a few things. I didn't even fill up the cart, and it was like $500. It's like, are you kidding me? But like, that's affected arcades as well, given that used to be the average cost on an arcade machine was something like $7,500, and then it skyrocketed up to $12,000. Almost doubled. In some cases, it more than doubled, depending on the game. And I think there was something here in the chat. Sorry, I missed that. Bush and Ryukat, you had asked about the CES show, but also how bad will it be for arcade machines moving forward with this stupid RAM memory shortage. And so it's like, it seems like there's a perfect storm kind of coming along, where you still have inflation out there. I mean, it's not as bad as it was, but it still exists out there. But now you have other things going on, like RAM shortages, where this might be something like the shipping problems that you might remember that were happening around 2021, 2022. Lots of major shipping delays, and shipping costs went through the roof as well. What used to cost $300 became $2,000. And I mean, it is a little bit worrisome on that. I don't want to predict anything. I don't know. I mean, we may see some more contracting going on. That's usually what happens in market crashes, is usually those who are in the weakest position end up closing their doors, and then you get others who are in better positions to kind of pick up the slack, perhaps. But I don't know yet. I guess we'll have to see how long the RAM shortage and the super high prices and the GPU stuff goes on. Maybe if everybody stopped using AI to make sweet dank memes, then we could see demand decrease for GPUs and RAM and all that stuff and data centers. But it doesn't seem like anybody's wanting to do that. So, that's kind of the big problem. And a lot of this stuff you can't do anything about. It's like, can I do anything about inflation? No, not really. I don't operate the money printing presses. But anyways, you do the best you can given the situation. And so for me, last year, I was finally able to make some purchases. Now, a few of those were exa-Arcadia stuff, like I got Jitsu Squad featuring the Samurai Pizza Cats. I got Omen of Sorrow Rising Chaos. I got a P47 Aces Mark II. But then I was finally able to eliminate enough debt where I felt comfortable taking on more debt. But the reason why I wanted to do that was because it's like it had been so long since I had anything new in here. I felt like that was maybe the problem as to why 2025 was not doing great for me. Now, unfortunately, it took a very long time for me to get the products. And so for most of the year, I did not have the two major things that I ended up buying. One was the Dungeons & Dragons, The Tyrant's Eye by Stern Pinball, and the other one was a Funky Beats air hockey table by Elot USA. Now, I didn't post this on Arcade Heroes. Like usually I'd post unboxing stuff to Arcade Heroes, the channel here. I decided to put it onto my Arcade Galactic channel just because I felt like I needed to do a little bit more marketing there for my own arcade to try and get some attention that way. And so that's where I put this video over there. But not all of it was in using a phone, but it did the same style. You know, it's me anyway, same camera and all that. But you don't need to see plumber crack or anything there. But yeah, I got Dungeons & Dragons. I want to say that was in August. And it was thanks to Primetime Amusements. They gave me a sweet deal that I was able to get both this and the air hockey table at a really, really nice price. And that was another reason why I decided to jump on that. Because otherwise, paying the full MSRP is probably what it works out. That has been doing okay. Now, the reason why did I get Dungeons & Dragons as well, I had heard from multiple different people, not just here in Utah, but also in other parts of the country where they said, yeah, I have a Dungeons & Dragons, and it's just doing crazy good. I get people coming in here all the time just to play that game. And since I heard that so consistently from different people, it's like, huh, okay, well, maybe I should get one, because otherwise it's like, yeah, pinball doesn't make anything, really. It does okay, but it's very difficult for it to make up for how much it costs, how much it earns don't match where you want them to. And so I had kind of vowed to not buy any more pinball, but because I got such a good deal on this one as a package, that's where I decided, oh, let's give this one try. And because of what I've been hearing, it'll bring people out. Unfortunately for me, I might be the only location where that hasn't happened. So again, it's done okay, but has it done that amazingly well like other locations have seen? Unfortunately, no, they haven't. But I think it's partially down to the situation of where I'm at. There's a lot of pinball competition in my area. There's 3 other Dungeons & Dragons pinball machines out there. Now, I'm the only one that has a premium, but it seems like most of the pinball players don't care. And so, again, I wouldn't have bought this if I didn't get it at the price I got it for. I would have either gotten something else or I would have gotten a Pro if I was going to get a pinball machine. But then the air hockey table, that one, it was just frustrating because it took so long to get here. If I had gotten it back in, I think, April when I placed the order, then it would have been great. It probably would have helped the year end up a lot better because an arcade without an air hockey table doesn't completely feel like an arcade. But, you know, it finally arrived. It does have an issue, which the service guys have still not figured out yet, and I've never seen this before, where it doesn't have a setting to where you reach a certain number of goals and it's game over. It's a difference of goals, and it's really frustrating because, I've never seen this before. It doesn't appear to have been programmed into the software at all. It's from some Chinese companies where they got it from, so that's been very frustrating. But despite that, as an air hockey table, it looks great, and it's been earning fantastically well. And so that was, I guess, one of those other problems. Is I think throughout most of 2024, I didn't have an air hockey table because I sold mine, and then, but it's like, yeah, I should have gotten an air hockey table a lot sooner than I did. But and I have also talked with another operator or two where they were saying that their business was about the same as they had seen the year prior. And so it definitely, I would suggest if you are an operator out there, if you can, getting something new always seems to help, because it's almost like, you know, with movie theaters, they're always having new films coming along to try and capture attention. And if it was a movie theater just playing the exact same thing for a year, then they would probably not be doing too well. So, yeah. Bush and Rio Cat, nice joke. So anyways, if you got any other questions about the arcade business and whatnot, I'm happy to share some thoughts. I know a lot of this has been very stream of consciousness and bouncing around a little bit, but I guess to summarize, just business hasn't been great for a lot of us out there. Inflation really does seem to be the biggest driver of people tightening their belts, which totally makes sense. It's just, for me as well, another thing that's been frustrating is, you know, when I go and drive out around town, I'll see other places that are just, blowing up. There's tons of people there. Other malls have far higher visitation. And, if I go over to the Costco that's not far away, I guarantee that there's, probably 1,000 people in that building right now. Whereas here in the mall, it's, maybe got 5 from what I can see. And so that just makes it's obviously I need to get to a new place, and I am looking into that possibility. I guess I will unveil that I have been talking with somebody who wants to partner up, and so I don't know yet if this is going to happen. That's why I've been very hesitant as to proclaiming that this is what's going to happen. However, if it does, then not only will I be moving, I'll be moving to a place that's probably 3 times as big, and be able to get a lot more stuff. Now I will, he wants to do more redemption stuff, and so that's one of those things I'll have to compromise on, but I'll still, keep a focus on the videos and the unique videos and stuff that other people generally don't grab as a way to compete. And I'll still have my exa-Arcadias, and maybe I can get another exa-Arcadia. I'd love to get an exa-Arc32, the Japanese style cabinet. But we'll talk more games here in a moment. Trade shows. So 2025 had a lot of interesting trade shows going on. And at the beginning of the year, you always start off with EAG. Well, actually, I guess sort of it's CES. I guess I didn't answer your question there, Ryu Cat. I actually haven't paid much attention to what's been going on to CES. I had thought about going down there because Vegas is only like an hour flight away. But yeah, just decided not to. So sometimes there are things that are very much arcade related at CES. Other times it's more just tech. And so I am curious to see what's happening there as far as new tech goes, because there always could be something new that shows up that could be adapted into arcades and then becomes a new standard of some kind, whether that's display tech or some new way to sense controls, things of that nature. But so I think you had mentioned there's like AI jukeboxes. I mean, that could be interesting depending on what the AI is. I mean, as long as it's not like generating songs on the fly, like what is that? Sora AI, I think it is, that does a lot of the music stuff. But I mean, I don't know what kind of copyright minefield that might be, but yeah, we'll see. But yeah, I mean, I've never operated a jukebox, so I don't know a whole lot about that segment of the industry. It's just, it seems like it's somewhat of a pain because of all the copyright issues that go on with music and stuff. But anyways, so yeah, you got CES, and then you have EAG Expo, which takes place in London. Now, last year we had coverage from people we had boots on the ground at EAG with Ted, who writes for the site, as well as site friend Kevin Williams, who runs the Stinger Report. They will also be at EAG this year, although I think Kevin was saying he's only going to spend a day as opposed to going through the entire show. What it is essentially like a mini IAPA for London, for the UK, for Europe and such. And so sometimes Xavier from Arcade Belgium goes over to EAG and checks out the new games there. And sometimes there are brand new games that we don't really see over in the States that are shown at EAG. Sometimes it's stuff from China. Sometimes it's stuff from another European manufacturer that maybe just debuts at that show and then eventually finds its way further west. As we posted this morning to arcadeheroes.com, Electrocoin, which is a distributor, they've been around for, I think, since the 80s, maybe even longer. Correct me if I'm wrong there. But they've had long-standing relationships with different Japanese companies like Konami and Taito. Of course, Taito practically doesn't do anything anymore, sadly, other than licensing. But Konami is going to release DDR World Universal Cabinet in Europe, and that's going to debut at EAG 2026. Someone in chat will have to remind me what day that is. I want to say it's the 15th through the 17th of January, but I could be wrong on that one. As far as I know, it's next week. But again, correct me if I'm wrong, and I'll correct the record. The 13th. Okay, thank you. We've got Amusement Expo coming up, a week from today. So yeah, stay tuned to the site. Also, we'll try to get videos up from that if we get anything that can be used. I'm actually still need to finish some IAPA stuff, but I've been working hard on trying to get the 2025 releases video out, which hopefully I can get done today or tomorrow, but no promises. But Amusement Expo International is happening in Las Vegas in March. I think it's the 17th through the 19th, but I might be slightly off on the dates there. It's usually around that same time every year. But from what I've heard so far, there hasn't been a lot that I've heard about Amusement Expo yet. Still a little early. We have been hearing some stuff about EAG. In fact, Sega's been posting several things, and they had a new shuffleboard that they're going to be showing there. We'll be doing a post about that and anything else Sega has. But at least for last year, this was at Amusement Expo in Vegas. Sorry, I know I'm shifting around between trade shows too much. But in Vegas, you had the debut of Top Gun Maverick, and this was a slightly early software build. What was interesting, I was given a lot of information about the development of this game prior. So the person who designed the Blazing Angels arcade cabinet for Global VR, which was released back in 2007, 2008, designed the Top Gun Maverick cabinet. But also, the software initially started off like Blazing Angels Arcade. Like, you could do free roam around a place, but as they did testing, they observed that most people got lost. They didn't know what to do. And so they turned it into an on-rails affair where you just, flying from essentially from point A to point B to reach your objective, blow lots of stuff up along the way. I can't remember exactly which date that this, or which month this came out in. I want to say August, but we'll get to that in a moment. There was new software for Godzilla Kaiju Wars VR. There was their Wizard of Oz Redemption game that was also at this show. But didn't realize on that booth tour that I spent a lot of time on Top Gun. But... yeah, there was the Wizard of Oz. Later on in the year, you had Bowl Expo, IAPA Asia, IAPA Europe, the AAA show and GTI Expos in China. This is where you got to see a lot of brand new products there for stuff like this was GTI Asia China, which we covered in, I think, 4 or 5 posts, which is where we first saw Storm Racer 2, Storm Rider X, Phantom Vanguard, and some other games which would show up here at IAPA as well. As far as I'm aware, so Storm Racer 2, I think we had done a post thinking that the game was available last month, but it's actually available this month. So that's something I need to make an adjustment to, go back and correct that record. But... yeah, last year was a pretty good year for exa-Arcadia as well. When it came to IAPA Expo Europe, they weren't there, but they were at IAPA Expo. They hadn't been, they hadn't been at Amusement Expo 2025. They skipped that. But they did show up at IAPA. Now, I should mention that exa-Arcadia will be at Amusement Expo 2026. And I believe, things can change because sometimes they do have to change plans depending on the licensors. But they have a new anime IP game that's coming out. And I believe they were hoping, when I talked to them at IAPA, that it would be released by be debuting at Amusement Expo, sorry. But at IAPA, we did get to see, there a moment ago, I showed the Toxic Crusaders banner, which was there. I got to play Hunter x Hunter Nen Impact for the first time. I got to play Neon Inferno Exa, which I actually have footage of. I'm just waiting for Exa's approval to post that. I also need to finish the video for Bayani, which is a one-on-one fighting game made in the Philippines, which was announced a very long time ago. I think it was announced like either 2019 or 2020. But I finally got to play a new, almost finished build of that. talking about EXA here because out of all the videos that we had posted from IAPA 2025, they were this booth tour was the most popular, which was a little bit surprising. Given that sometimes videos based on games with certain names attached to them tend to do the best. But it shows that there's a lot of interest in EXA there. We did 6 different parts for IAPA 2025 coverage where you could get everything about all the different companies that released or that showed off new product there. There was a lot of stuff to go through. It was one of the busiest IAPAs that I had been to. And in a way that was a weird... don't know if juxtaposition is the right word for it, but it was strange that despite where I talked about a lot about the decline of the industry and gaming in general, but also the arcade business, at IAPA 2025, you wouldn't have really known anything like that was going on. So the show was the busiest that they had ever recorded, something over 38,000 visitors, which is not the biggest trade show in the world, as far as trade shows go. I know there's some shows that get like 60,000 people or whatever. But still, for IAPA's records, that showed that there was a lot of interest. And funny thing is I had heard during the show that there were some buyers, like from the Middle East and some from Europe that weren't in attendance. And so it's like if everybody in the industry had showed up, then it would have been even busier. But if you recall, around the time of IAPA, there was the U.S. government shutdown, and that was starting to cause a lot of flight delays, especially with international ones, and so that probably had some kind of effect just because of how close things ended up being to it. So maybe if that hadn't have happened, it would have been an even busier IAPA. But a busy IAPA also shows that there was a lot of product, and like I said, I don't think I had ever filmed so much stuff, and I'd never felt so busy. I almost felt like I had no time to do anything, and I even missed out on hanging out with some people because of all the work that I had to do at that show. And so, oh yeah, and there was also a Japan's Amusement Expo, which happened the week before, like right before IAPA started. But at least this year, from what I hear, they are pushing it back a little bit, so it won't be right on top of IAPA. But those are the trade shows. We always cover trade shows because this is where we get to have some hands-on time with brand new products. It's usually where brand new products are shown. Sometimes they aren't even announced at all, and they just show up at a trade show booth, and then they just are available. I do wish that more companies would be a little more forthcoming on how they announce things. But here we are, finally, to the releases of 2025. And as always, each year I do a video like this one where I just go through from January through December, showing you all the different new games that have been released. And so, as I've said, I haven't posted anything new to this channel just because I've been working really hard on the 2025 one, in addition to having all this other stuff that I'm supposed to be doing. And I just haven't really had the time. But also part of that's just been due to how many games came out last year. There was quite a few. And so I don't remember the exact numbers off the top of my head, but I'm pretty sure that 2025 saw more new products available than 2024. And that is a good indicator of a healthy market. However, if all that stuff doesn't sell very well in 2025, then that will lead to something of a depressive situation within the market in 2026. But one thing about the tracking page, so if you're not familiar with the Arcade Heroes website very well, right here we have new releases, and this is actually our most visited page every single year. We've been tracking this since 2009, which we also include backlinks to those previous years. And so if you want to see anything between then when it was released, this is the place to go. And I think because of that, this is why it's always, whichever year is currently the new one, it's always the most viewed page on the site. And so this, I guess, is in a way a kind of a preview of the 2025 video, but does have a lot of stuff from exa-Arcadia. in there. We do separate things out between North America, Asia, Europe, Redemption, everything else. Now, when we say Redemption, we're talking about games that the game screen is more of a scoreboard than it is something within the game itself, although it's kind of hard to define exactly. So it's like there probably are some redemption things that we could put into just the regular releases, like Icy Slush Rush, perhaps. I mean, Duck Derby I wouldn't, just because the video screen really has nothing to do with the gameplay itself. But Big Sea Fishing, I think that might have a non-redemption mode on it, whereas like Minions Bullseye Mania, I don't think any purpose in playing that one without that I mean, it needs the screen, but it can only be played as a redemption game is what I'm trying to say. Same thing with The Wizard of Oz by Raw Thrills. But mainly focusing here on North America. I do think we need to go back and make some corrections on Asia and Europe here, but this should be accurate with the exception of one game on North America, and I'll mention that when we get to it. Let's see. So we had Air Gallet Exa label came out on April 15th. Rarely do we get an actual like date when something begins shipping, but that's a nice thing, I guess, as well about exa-Arcadia is usually they will announce that on like today it's available, or today it began shipping. Oh yeah, also one thing that I've always done on these pages is if the game is exclusive to arcades, we use this little symbol here, I forget what the name of it is, to denote that it's exclusive to arcades and that you can't find this precise game on a port somewhere else. And actually most of the games on this list fall into that category. Now sometimes with exa-Arcadia, they do have games which are available at home, and so we'll put ACE, which means that it has some exclusive content to it that's not available at home, although it's not always laid out in great detail as to what those differences are. We had Alpha Ops VR Strike by 3 Mind Wave and Sega Amusements come out in July. There is a slightly different version of this available in China where it just uses one single screen instead of the two next to each other. Also uses a slightly different gun controller, but otherwise, as far as I know, all the game software is exactly the same. Asuka 120% Burning Feet Excellent by exa-Arcadia. Actually, I could probably put that as December 24th, and so that was the last Exa game that came out in the year. It was almost the last game of the year, but there was one other game that managed to take that crown. Avian Nights by Alan Wong came out in January. Essentially, if you hadn't played it, it's essentially like Joust, a brand new Joust. It just has backgrounds, music, and differences on the power-ups, and a couple of other differences. So it's not exactly Joust, and that's why it's not called Joust, aside from just not being licensed for Joust anyways. Axel City 2, The Final Storm for exa-Arcadia came out in November. This is almost like a different game. It's a huge content update to Axel City 2, which has been a popular one-on-one fighting game on the exa-Arcadia. One thing that I should also throw out is I did see in talking with Exa, they shared an arcade in Japan's earnings, and the exa-Arcadia was by far the #1 game. And I guess I should say that there was I think it was the Gundam, one of those sit-down Gundam games, not the ones that you sit inside of, the Gundam pods, but the Extreme versus Boost, I think it's called, by Bandai Namco, was not super far behind the exa-Arcadia in terms of plays. I think it was Gundam Extreme 2. I'd love to play that. And what you just said there, Ryucat, does remind me, I guess I should have brought this up in business talk. I have heard of a couple of places which are announcing closures. There's a Japanese importation company called Game Saru where they posted something on Facebook saying that if things keep going the way they are, they may be closed before January is out. And then I just saw this morning that Brooklyn Arcade, is it the Brooklyn Games and Arcade? In New York City, they announced that they are going to be closing down, I think, by March, and so really sad to see that. But anyways, I was talking about Exa earnings. Yeah, the exa-Arcadia was totally kicking the crap out of most everything there. I mean, it was the #1 game in terms of how many plays it got, and beating out the Gundam Extreme 2. But a lot of the other games were way, way down the list on how many plays, including Street Fighter 6 type arcade. Whereas the exa-Arcadia had something well over 2,000 plays or something. I don't know if that was for the year or if it was just for the month or what it was, but like Street Fighter 6 only had like 18 or 50 or something in the double digits. It was kind of pathetic. But like Axel City 2 is one of those games that I've consistently heard outperforms new stuff like Street Fighter 6, which is kind of surprising given that it doesn't look like a modern game. It looks like it came out of 1998 or in 97, somewhere around there. Almost looks a little bit like Super Street Fighter 2 Turbo. Maybe not quite in terms of animation quality, but it's kind of a similar graphical effect. But yeah, a lot of people seem to like Axel City 2, so if you see an arcade out there with one, there you go. Bigfoot Smash came out in March. This could be classified as well as a redemption game. What's interesting about this, other than the moving seats, is that the screen, when you would play in single player, it would still show the 2 other players, but in its very narrow strip. Like, it would dynamically change the size of the screen depending on how many people were playing. And that was cool to see, a little bit different to see. This wasn't the first Bigfoot game that Unis had released either, but seems like one that they push pretty strongly. Bunny Bomber Blast came out to the exa-Arcadia in March. This is basically like Bomberman meets Dig Dug. Looks like it came out of 1982 as well as graphically. Cambria Sword Another Cry came out on January 28th. This is a scrolling shoot 'em up with tons of content, and that's where this would be. It's so different from the console version. I call it just arcade exclusive. I think it has something like 80 weapons in it and hundreds of bosses, something like that. Cannonball Jam by Blue Motion Games came out in February. They were a company that I met, or I saw for the first time at IAPA 2024, but they didn't have this game there yet. They debuted this game and another at Amusement Expo last year. And keep an eye on Blue Motion Games because at Amusement Expo 2026, they are going to unveil a new light gun game. And it's tied to a major Hollywood IP, and I'm sure it'll get some good, strong attention. But Cannonball Jam came out there. It fires actual balls at the screen. It does work as a redemption game. Chaos Code Nemesis Experiment came out in November, a sequel to Chaos Code. Very fun game series. I used to own the first Chaos Code. Been thinking about getting this sequel as well. Cyberpunk 2077 Turf Wars came out on August 1st. Now, I noticed that looking at the video views, a lot of people watched the stuff that we covered on this from March, but the version I played at IAPA just a couple of months ago was much better, much more polished, and so you could see where they had added things in from the original game that were lacking in the March version. The March prototype, I should call it. But if you haven't seen this one, look up the IAPA 2025 video as opposed to the Amusement Expo videos, so you can see what the actual production one is like. But this is like it's a modern shooting gallery, a mixed reality shooting gallery, where it uses projectors to map images to moving targets, or to targets that you shoot with these pellet guns, and it knocks them down. So yeah, pretty cool variation. Although I know some people were disappointed. They were wanting an actual Cyberpunk on-rails game like it were Time Crisis or House of the Dead or something like that, which I think would still be a good idea for LAI Games to try if they could do that. But still, I really appreciated the innovation and the creativity that went into this one. And like I said, it did get a better release when it finally hit production. Demon Bride X again, which is a new version of the Demon Bride one-on-one fighting game series, where it's demons versus angels, drawn in anime style. Desert Chase, also by Blue Motion Games, the 4-player model came out in February. We'll talk a little bit more about them later when we get to different models. Dino Dash by Eunice, a dinosaur racing game. It came out in October, and Eunice confirmed to me that this actually came out. Oh, no, actually, I did forget one. So there's 2 games I actually forgot that need to be added to this. Carnival Shot, which is a game that's kind of like Point Blank or Gun Bullet by Namco, but designed by Eunice, did apparently come out last year. It's just there was so little information on it. It wasn't at IAPA, it wasn't at Amusement Expo, that I thought it had just been canceled. But Eunice confirmed to me that it was shipping. So I was like, okay. But I couldn't find out. They wouldn't say which month it came out, so I'll just say summer. I would guess, because from what I remember, they were talking a little bit about it at Amusement Expo. They were saying like April, May, something like that. I guess I should change that to spring. But yeah, Eunice is strange in their releases sometimes. And the other game that's missing from the list right now is also another Eunice game. So go figure. Dino Storm by Eunice also came out in March. This one wasn't at IAPA 2025. It was at IAPA 2024. I enjoyed this one. I'm surprised they weren't promoting it a little bit more. They've mainly been focused on another game, which we'll talk about in a moment. Dune, the first pinball machine on the list, by Barrels of Fun, came out in May. Unlike their other game, which we'll talk about a little bit later, the Winchester Mystery House, as far as I know, this one was not super limited in production numbers and didn't sell out. And so I think you can still get one. Might need to double check on that. I have not seen it, not been able to play it, because a company like Barrels of Fun doesn't go to industry trade shows. They'll go to stuff like Pinball Expo and such, but not things like IAPA or Amusement Expo, unfortunately. So that means that I have a harder time coming across those. Dungeons and Dragons is the Tyrant's Eye. I still need to correct that spelling there because I did that wrong. Came out in January. Actually, it's kind of shocking. Usually Stern does announce their next game at the very first week of January. I think last year Dungeons & Dragons was announced like on the 3rd or whatever. It's like the Monday after New Year's, or somewhere close to that. So far I haven't heard anything yet, but maybe it's just because I've been paying attention to the stream and not looking at news online that they've announced one. Because Stern would be at CES. That would be one of the few companies representing our industry there, and they've done pretty well there. In fact, I think their booth at CES is bigger and badder than it is at IAPA or Amusement Expo, funny enough. And that's because there's so many collectors that buy pinball machines that's actually a bigger part of their market ever since 2020 came along. And so that's why they'll go to events like that and Comic-Con and such. Eartheon Exo label came out on July 31st. Fantastic game. Highly recommend getting this one for consoles. It's available there too, but it does have some content on the arcade version that makes it just, kind of the director's cut on it. Music's fantastic. Graphics are just like from a Sega Genesis or Mega Drive because it was designed for that. That was the target platform in the first place. But designed by Yuzo Kushiro, who has done many famous game tracks out there, and that's why the music on this is so amazing, because he actually designed tracks using every variation of Sega Genesis hardware that existed. And I think he said something like, I can't remember if it was the CDX or I can't remember which variation it was that he said was his favorite, because there actually are some subtle differences in how each one of those models, like the Sega Genesis Model 1, the Model 2, the Sega CD, the CDX, all that stuff, there was slight variations in the sound hardware. Food Fight Frenzy, one of the few indie arcade games on the list, came out in June. And this is a 4-player version of Atari's 1982 or 83 classic Food Fight. It turns it into a competitive version for bars. In my humble opinion, they really should have done a better, more standout cabinet for it. But I'm guessing they just wanted to keep it looking very retro. But the problem is in a lot of locations, looking too retro makes people think, well, this is an old game, and so they don't play it, don't give it a chance. Golden Tee 2026, or sorry, Golden Tee PGA Tour 2026 came out on September 29th. And so after 2020, it disrupted how Golden Tee would be released, but now it looks like they've gotten back to every annual Golden Tee releases in September. Goldstorm Pirates, fantastic light gun game, which is not officially a sequel to Deadstorm Pirates, but it kind of is. It's weird how Bandai Namco's handling that, or when they say we talk about it, don't call it a sequel. Came out in July, and I guess we need to update the graphic on this because it now has golden guns, kind of like Sega's Golden Gun from 2010. Gravatar Recharged by Atari and Allen 1. This did come out in December. This was the very last game that came out in 2025, as far as I can find out. Harry Potter by Jersey Jack Pinball came out in June, and at IAPA 2025, that was the first time that I had a chance to actually play that. Thought it was fun. Thought it was good. Sorry, I should check the chat here. So, Reacats on, yeah, I have several shoot 'em ups. I mean, on the Exa, I had, like, I think I mentioned the P-47 Aces Mark II. I have Retra Hexa, which I think is a fantastic game. I have Dodonpachi True Death Exa label. Trying to remember what else I have on the Exa. Can't really remember now, but for other games, I do have a Darius Burst, another Chronicle. I have one of 7 English models of that one, and so as far as I was told by Taito themselves, they only made 7 of them. They didn't sell any. It sold very poorly. They didn't really do a good job at promoting it, to be honest. But yeah, I got my hands on one of the test models, and so I have that. It's always been one of my favorite games. I have a Strikers 1945 2 and a 3, although on the floor right now I have 3. I have multiple other shoot 'em ups in storage on PCBs. I probably need to sell off a few of them to help possible moving locations and such, and or paying off bills and such. But I actually have he died in 2018, but I was good friends with Eric Milonas, who was known as ECM for Game Fan Magazine. He was the editor of Game Fan Magazine for many years. Incredible gamer. I've never seen anybody so talented at gaming. We would often have game nights where we would play games online together with him and a few others that were friends of his that became my friends too. But it's every time we played a game, he was always carrying the team because he was just so freaking talented at stuff. But anyways, there was a point where he not only sold me a few of his boards, but he also was trying to sell them off, and he was trying to make, because his days at Game Fan, he would oftentimes get like review boards from Japan, and so he had like Gwange from Cave and. Oh gosh, there was that, I can't remember what it's called. There was a vertical game from Konami that he had. That there was like almost like an RPG or adventure game, but I can't remember what it's called now. He had that. He had Battle Book Raid. He had one of the Thunder Force arcade games, although that was one that he did end up selling off before he died. I still have most of his boards in the back, and sometimes I'll swap them out. Armed Police Bat Riders, ESP Rede, and stuff. And so just shoot 'em ups don't usually do super well in a modern arcade, unfortunately. Like my Darius Burst, well, back when I got it for a week or two, it actually outperformed my Terminator Salvation. But I think it was just because the game cabinet itself, that's what helps it stand out. When you put it into a 1990s looking cabinet, nobody, it's like, I don't care. But if you have it in something different, so with 2 screens and 4 players and a booming sound system, then yeah, it does better. So, but yeah, I know one board that ECM was trying to find for me because I was interested in it was an R-Type Leo, but he could never find it, and so he must have sold it off beforehand. Anyways, let's see. Hunter x Hunter Nen Impact came out in October. This was just kind of a sudden thing. This has all the content for all the DLC content from all the home console versions, which by my understanding, it's different on the PlayStation, different on the Xbox, different on the Switch or something like that. So on the arcade version, you get all of that in the same package. Jackpot Racer, which is mainly a redemption game, but Rothrills did tell me that it does have a non-redemption mode built into it. It's just, I would be shocked if anybody gets a game called Jackpot Racer and then puts it on non-redemption. but you can if you really want to. That came out in November. Jam Jam and Jelly Excelente came out in June, and that's another fantastic shoot 'em up game. Again, if shoot 'em ups did better in my location, I'd probably be picking up more of these. I mean, the animation on Jam Jam and Jelly, the voice acting, it's all really fantastic. The gameplay feels like a Darius Burst, but more bullet helly. I highly recommend it if you ever come across this, or if you had a location with an exa and you were wanting to support them. It's just, yeah, I don't know how many locations here will find it, but probably in Japan you could find it easily. And that is exclusive to the platform. That's one other thing too, is exa has been getting more and more exclusives to that platform as a way to help drive attention to the locations that have one. Kaiju Rampage came out on February 28th by Wallop IGS and LAI Games. I've been trying to verify when the new 4-player Unite version comes out. As far as I know, the gameplay is very similar. I mean, obviously there's some changes because you have free roaming guns and it's up to 4 players. But some people that have played this have said that this is one of the best light gun games that they've played in modern times. I would need to really sit down and play it again to compare it to like Goldstorm Pirates or something, or Godzilla Kaiju Wars. But yeah. Oh yeah, I do have a Last Resort. I do have that on cartridge. Nobody ever plays it when I do put it out because it's super tough. I also have a Blazing Star, which was one of my first games that I ever had where it's like, wow, this has a lot of weird English in it, and that's where I learned about English. Let's see, King Kong Myth of Terror Island came out on April 15th. And the first time I got to play that was at IAPA 2025. I enjoyed it, even though I'm not like a big King Kong fan or whatever. The game was fun. My DX Prism by Sega came out in September, and by all accounts that I've heard, it's been doing extremely well. At the beginning of the stream here, if you were here for that, as I mentioned, I have a My Finale here that's owned by a local operator, but unfortunately it's been full of problems, and so it hasn't been working to actually take coins, and like now both monitors are broken. But for the brand new version that's out there, I've seen locations when it first came out that had lines of people waiting to play it, and yeah, as Ted says in the chat, for him, the release of this game is the highlight of the year for him. I think for most rhythm gamers, that would be the case. Now, there is no word yet on whether or not this will come to Europe. I was asked about that from players in Europe, and I also asked Sega about that, but they have no comment on it. One of the problems with it is, a company like Sega, or any of these arcade companies, as I kind of referred to during my rant about the state of the industry, is they have to be very careful about what they release. Because all these games that we're talking about here, most of these, maybe not each one of them, but most of them costs a few million to several $1,000,000 to develop. And if you cannot sell enough units to cover all of those costs, then you take that loss. Now, some companies have enough money in the bank where they can take losses. Some can't. And like I talked about when it came to laser discs, certain very expensive flops sunk the companies. And we've seen that in in the AAA home gaming space. How many jobs have been lost from like Ubisoft and Microsoft, Xbox division. I don't know how much damage has been done to EA or anything lately, but still, flops mean people lose jobs. And so now, by all accounts, My has been doing extremely well. In fact, I think it's become one of the better selling rhythm games out there. I'm pretty sure that Step Maniacs by Step Revolution is the best selling rhythm game that's been out on the market in recent years, as they mentioned on LinkedIn that they sold over 5,000 units, which is extremely good for a rhythm game. Their Re-Rave game that they only sold 50 of those, to give you an idea as to the difference in there. Now, we've never heard numbers on how many Pump It Ups have sold or how many DDRs have sold, so that's just kind of up in the air. You can make a wild guess. But, you know, I've heard a lot about how many Mai-Mais have been showing up out there and the enthusiasm that's behind them. And so, yeah, that sucks when you come across one that's broken. Just like if you came into my arcade right now, you'd see a Mai-Mai and it's busted. And so it sucks when that happens. But Sega will be updating this every year, so if you're in North America, the software is going to be exactly the same as what's seen in Japan. It may be behind a little bit, but that's part of the cost of running one of these. Now, what I was initially told about this from Paul Williams before he died, that's actually somebody else we should have mentioned at the beginning as far as prominent people in the industry who died last year. Paul Williams, who was the CEO of Sega Amusements. I know he died from some form of cancer, became very aggressive very suddenly, and that's when he stepped down from the CEO position, and unfortunately he passed away a very short time after that. But fortunately, before that, you know, I had no idea he was going through any of that when I talked to him. But he had said that if My DX does really well in the States, then that's where they would consider Europe. Because now there are different costs that they have to worry about in Europe, such as licensing. It's all with licensing music and stuff like that. It's not just licensing the song. You also have to license performance rights as though they were being played in a public venue, like with jukeboxes. And so that's where it can make rhythm games extremely expensive to have to deal with. And so that's the spiel as to why it's not in Europe yet. But cross your fingers, maybe one day, here in the near future, maybe sometime this year, we'll get an announcement and it'll be along. Yeah. So Marksman by Andamiro is a new shooting gallery style gun game that came out last month. This can work for tickets, but what was interesting about this one is it had more situations where you're like shooting bad guys and monsters than just shooting like bottles and frisbees and stuff like that. Hey guys, how's it going?
How much does it cost to play this game?
That's $1 to play. Yeah, per person.
Can I get $4?
Sure. There's that.
Alright, thank you.
Yeah, and there's your change.
Alright,
Thank
thank you.
you. It's for maximum tune. Let's see. Missile Command Recharged came out in July, which is exactly 45 years after Missile Command had been released by Atari. And I've heard some people be critical on the Alan 1 Atari releases, but it's like the games really are different now. Disclaimer, I've been helping and giving suggestions as to design changes on both Asteroids and Missile Command and Gravitar. Now, not everything that I suggested was done. Like, I was pushing really hard for secrets to be implemented in the games, and they decided not to implement those. But like, if you play the arcade version of Missile Command Recharge and you play the $10 console version, they're practically different games. They may look somewhat similar, but I would say that the Missile Command, the arcade version, looks better, because in that one you're defending all 50 U.S. states, and so the background changes, and the background was designed to look like it has landmarks from that particular state in there. But it also restores things like defend the cities. It restores the nuclear mushroom cow. Yeah.
I already put it forward.
It says that there's 3, so there's just missing one. So anyways, it is a better game in my opinion, and I think anybody who actually played them side by side could see that is objectively true. Monster Jet Riders by Eunice came out in September, which is part of the series of Monster Kart, which came out on February 20th. And as I alluded to earlier, this is the Monster Kart is apparently one of the bigger releases by Unis that they've done, where it sold very well after IAPA 2024, and so they really started pushing it. This does have a deluxe version, but what's cool between these two games is that you can actually connect them together. And so different controllers, but they share the same tracks and monsters and such. So don't see that too often in arcades. And then also by Unis, you had Neon Rush, which came out in July, which was this dual screen version, but at IAPA 2025, they had a single screen deluxe twin model. And I was actually impressed by Neon Rush. It was one of the better racers that I've ever played by Unis. Although I remember standing there at the booth and it was doing the attract mode, and it showed a name of another company, which unfortunately I wasn't filming at that time. I can't remember what the third party was called that developed this for Unis, but that was interesting. I mean, again, the quality was up there. I'm not a consultant for Atari. It's more for Alan 1. However, with the stuff that I've done, I've been able to talk with and to get to know a few people at Atari about that. And so, in a way, it's almost felt like I've been able to do some stuff for Atari, which, if you know me, I grew up as an Atari fan. So that's been kind of cool. But yeah, at the very least, I could say that I have my name credited on in a minor way on these Atari Recharged games. And Alan 1 does have some new stuff coming for the Recharged games here this year. Which should be at Amusement Expo, including a new cabinet design. But gotta wait until that's announced. Nope Nurses is the only game released for the Hot Pink platform, which is a not safe for work variation of the exa-Arcadia. Hi, how's it going? How can I help you out? Sure. Go ahead. There you go.
Thank you.
Yep, you're welcome. If there's something that's off that you want to play, let me know. I can turn it on. Perfect Pour. This is another indie game that came out, and so this is a source of a little bit of confusion out there. Perfect Pour is the genesis of this idea of the modern tapper, of people coming to the tap and you have to fill up the drink and not spill. And somebody at Baytech saw this game when it was out testing, because it was testing for a good 18 months or so in the Iowa, Wisconsin area, and they came up with Icy Slush Rush. But being Baytech, they had the resources to create the game and have it at IAPA 2024. And so everybody in the industry thinks that Icy came up with the idea and then Perfect Pour copied it. But it's actually the other way around. Perfect Pour came up with the idea, and then Icy and Soda Slam, which will be mentioned here in a moment. Well, actually, Soda Slam is actually Perfect Pour. It was worked on by DSM Arcade. I'll get into that in a moment, but very fun game. And then there was another model for this that came out later in last year of the Pabst Blue Ribbon Edition, so it had some licensing. Predator by Pinball Brothers came out in September. I've seen Pinball Brothers doing a lot of promotion on this, but I've not played it, so I can't really comment on it. It looks cool. I'd like to give it a try. I would give it a try if I came across one, but not much else I can say about that. Sailor's Quest 2 VR came out in January, although as I was doing research on this one, it was really hard to find anything out about it because some of the videos that Unis was sharing was of the first game, and like even IGS promotes more the first game than they do the sequel, so that was a little weird. But we do have somebody from China in the Arcade Heroes Discord who confirmed that they've seen Sailor's Quest 2 VR around China. I haven't seen any here in the States. The only time I've seen this game was at IAPA 2024. Again, it wasn't at Amusement Expo or Bowl Expo or IAPA 2025, so don't know what the deal is there. As I mentioned, Soda Slam. So Soda Slam is basically an FEC variation of Perfect Pour. It was designed by DSM. It's based on the Perfect Pour software, but you could say dumbed down for redemption play. I actually do have a Soda Slam here that I can see in my view, and I have it set to non-ticket mode. It's done okay, but if I had like a Redemption Arcade, it'd probably be doing better. Or there's actually two licensed variations of it out there. There's a Dr. Pepper version and there's a Liquid Death version. But I would personally think that either one of those would probably do better, just because they, have that name attached to them as opposed to something more generic. Oh, interesting that. So I guess there is a Sailor's Quest 2 out there for what Ted's saying in the chat. Don't know where, but somewhere out there in the wild. Star Wars Fall of the Empire by Stern Pinball came out in September. I've already done plenty of ranting on this one, but as far as approachable game goes, very easy to play. Although I did really, really, really well on Walking Dead versus how I did on Star Wars, for whatever reason that is. Super Drill by Ace Amusement and Amusement Source International came out in January. And this is a fun game. It's kind of like Dig Dug, but you're using drills and they're constantly moving. Cool little joystick-style controllers that are like giant drills. I had fun with it. And this could be played without tickets. Top Gun Maverick, okay, it was May when that came out, and at IAPA 2025, I got to play the final production version. I enjoyed Top Gun. I would get a Top Gun for my location if I had the budget for it. Kind of wonder if they'll do a smaller SD version of it at some point, but don't know if they will for sure. Let's see, Vanguard Princess R for the exa-Arcadia came out in October. As I just mentioned, The Walking Dead Remastered. I did extremely well on this one for some reason, somehow. Usually I suck at pinball. Or I guess I'm okay at pinball, but when I played Walking Dead Remastered at IAPA, I just kept playing for like 10, almost 15 minutes. And it was similar to the Godzilla 70th Anniversary Edition. When I came across that one once, I just played it for over 10 minutes, and I had a line forming behind me of people wanting to play. It's like, sorry, I'm actually doing good. And then last but not least, we have Wild Hunting by Ace Amusement, which is essentially like Big Buck Reloaded. Very similar in some ways, but there are a few differences. Like there's no reload function. If you shoot the uninfected animals, it doesn't end your game. It does have limited ammunition, so you shouldn't spray and pray. You have to be more careful about it. Excuse me, sorry. That's what a mute button should be for, but I don't have a stream deck. But yeah, you can do 4-player or 2 players there. Now, with several of these games, other alternate models were also released during the year. I'm kind of on the fence as to maybe putting Godzilla Kaiju Wars into just the regular one, because this has twice the content that the VR version has, which essentially makes it a brand new game. And actually, I guess that's what I'll have to do is for the video, is that I'll include it on there, just because if I include Axel City 2, then I should include Godzilla Kaiju Wars. Sometimes these are arbitrary lines, whatever. Don't know what the dividing line is between worthy for the main list or not. Kind of like defining a planet, right? But Desert Chase had a 2-player model come out, I think it was November. Dr. Pepper Soda Slam, I already mentioned, came out in October. House of the Dead Scarlet Dawn, the theater model, came out in February. I've still not seen this one anywhere because it didn't come to Amusement Expo or Bowl Expo. I didn't go to Bowl Expo, but I saw coverage from it. Didn't come to IAPA 2025, and so, but I know it's just a slightly pared down version. Liquid Death, which is essentially Soda Slam, but with the Liquid Death license applied to it, came out in December. Monster Kart Deluxe, already mentioned, as well as Neon Rush and Perfect Pour. Eunice did a 2-player version of their Raccoon Rampage water gun game that came out earlier in the year. Skull of Shadow 2-player by Ace Amusements came out through Amusement Source International, I think November. And then Super Blaster, the 2-player model by Triotech, came out in September. And then there were a number of these limited or timed releases. Beetlejuice by Spooky Pinball, which already sold out. We include anything that's just direct, that you buy direct from China.
$1 for change?
Just 1 out of a 20? I don't know.
Sorry.
Yeah, it's okay.
I don't have bit more chores.
Okay, yeah, you're in luck.
Espérame.
There's 19.
Thank you, sir.
And there you go. Okay. So yeah, anything sold direct from China, we would put into a limited or time release category. So like Biker's Madness or Crossbow Fishing by Ace Amusement, because those particular games have not been picked up by anybody like Amusement Source International or by Coastal Amusements. Cyberpunk 2077 Turf Wars came out, or that was Dave and Buster's limited release, and so that's where we delineate some of these, like Round One USA or Dave and Buster's. Sometimes get these games that are on a temporary basis, or it's an exclusive to them, like the UFC Challenge that came out in March. I mentioned the Winchester Mystery House pinball machine. Hot Wheels Victory Lap is an interesting one. I'm kind of wondering about that. I didn't get a chance to ask Adrenaline about that at IAPA, because at IAPA they debuted the Back to the Future Redemption game, but there was nothing about Hot Wheels anywhere, and so that was a little strange. It's like, seems like that would be a good modern racing game to pick up any slack that you're not getting from other stuff. But yeah, so, and also as I'm thinking, so yeah, there are a few games that are, I guess, missing from the list. One of them I still need to verify, but two that I did verify for certain that we still need to add here is Carnival Shop by Eunice and Spin City by Eunice as well. But then Coastal Amusements, I believe they started shipping Wild West Shootout 2 at the very end of the year. They were supposed to start shipping it earlier in the year, but then all the tariff stuff happened and they delayed it. But I'm pretty sure those things were made available by December. But I need to double check with Coastal on that before I finish that video, so we'll see on that. But that's all the stuff that came out last year. And just note that if you click on this now, you'll go to the 2026 page, where it just shows all the stuff that's coming soon. Since the year is still, we're only 6 days into the new year, we don't have anything already released yet, but I'm sure that'll start changing here soon. Take it easy on the shifter, guys. Take it easy on the shifter, please, because it can break. Thank you. All right. Let's see. All right. I guess just for getting into, I'm going to be ending this stream soon because I need to be going anyways. But for stuff coming this year, the one that I think is going to be the most anticipated by far is Resident Evil 2 Deadshot by Bandai Namco Amusements and Capcom. A little weird to me on somebody arguing with me about that this should go to consoles and it would be no different if you had a Sindung gun. I mean, take a good look at the pistol here. I know it's not on the screen the whole time there, but like that is designed to look exactly like a pistol, and it has stronger force feedback. Sindung is crap. I have them on my Enter the Gungeon, and it should not have been used. They should have used something different, because, it's just super unreliable. The calibration on it sucks. Loses the calibration all the time. Would not recommend. Now, I'm sure it's fine in a non-arcade setting, or it's okay in a non-arcade setting, but, really, would you really take a Sindeng gun or any other gun made for homes over, like, an actual Time Crisis 2 or Time Crisis 3 pistol? Come on. But that'll probably be releasing this year if it passes testing. I have a hunch it will, is because it seems like every time it shows up on test somewhere, people go crazy for it. Now, it is surprising that we have a game this bloody. I wouldn't be shocked to see them either tone it down or put an option in there to turn off blood or change the color. Like, that was one cool thing with the original House of the Dead, is you could have like green or purple or brown blood if you wanted to change that. I'm surprised that more games haven't had that option. Even House of the Dead games haven't always had that option. Like Scarlet Dawn, I don't recall that really offering it. Maybe it does, and I just didn't find the option there. But you know, looks like a beautiful game. It's obviously based on the 2019 remake, but changed enough so it will be an exclusive to arcades, which is why some people are crying that it's not coming to their PS5, and they would totally buy it. One of my favorites is surprises of IAPA 2025 was this still not finished game. This probably will change from what the footage is shown here, but the Baki Hamna Blood Arena Clash. Maximum Tune was my best earning game last year, which is I think like the third or fourth year running, but it's starting to have some technical problems. We keep having an issue where the machines just keep crashing and resetting themselves, and so that's been frustrating. But anyways, as you've seen here, what's interesting about Baki Hamna is it's basically like a very brutal Punch-Out. Punch-Out meets Mortal Kombat almost. But the motion's very fluid, and you can actually hold over on the side on your defense if you want to, as opposed to Punch-Out where it bounces you back to the center position. But that'll probably be coming out this spring maybe, or sometime later this year. And like I said, there will be a lot more stuff coming from exa-Arcadia in the year. Now, on a good note, as we talked about, some of the challenges that businesses had, one of the things that we always do on Arcade Heroes is cover locations as best we can. And so we'll do these location watch posts. Now, at the beginning of the year, we had somebody from Japan, one of our True Blue friends, actually go out, he's from Japan, and lives or has lived there, and he did this report on showing these various Japanese locations, and so we're very grateful to him for producing this and sharing all these photos and such. And sometimes you do see American-made games like Minecraft Dungeons Arcade, and it's funny, these are like gambling chairs over there. Or the Japanese version of Goldstorm Pirates, and hey, there's a Mai. Surprise, surprise. They're metal games, slot machines. I guess that would explain why the Minecraft had those seats there. But, oops. So, throughout the year, there were a lot of new locations that opened up their doors. We had a location watch for February, March, May, July, August, October, December. Now, in the past, yes, we have had more of those. I think it was like 2018, 2019 as well. Every single month we had a location watch, and it was a long list. And that was showing growth in the industry. But of course, this year, not quite as much, but still some. So it's like the thing that's always frustrated me about covering the industry has been that people are always hyper focused on the negatives, as far as like if one location closes, people will freak out and they'll get billions of views or whatever, but a brand new arcade opens and it's crickets. Hey guys, how's it going? Good. How can I help you? Yeah, gate's open, we're open. We just don't turn on all the games when nobody's around. It just wastes power. But I can turn on anything you guys want to play, no problem.
Okay.
We'll start off with $5.
Okay. Oh, you're fine. Okay, here you go. Thank you. And we do ask any drinks, stay up here, please, so we don't get any spills on the games. Thank you. Let me go turn that one on since it's off, but it'll take it a few minutes. Just to finish up really quick on locations. So thanks to everybody who shares new location news on the Arcade Heroes Discord or emails it to us. So we really appreciate that. Apologies whenever we miss a spot, but we'll try and get to it the next time. And if you do hear about any new location that's out there, please go and visit them. Don't just like and subscribe to their page and whatnot. It's like businesses need people to come in and spend money. And so if more of that happens, then more arcades will stay in business, more arcades will open. But also, as I've touted before, is that a lot of people lament how much redemption is out there. Now, the reason why redemption is so prevalent in the industry is because that's what makes the money. That's what gets played. So, like, if you are a gamer and you go and you're in the vicinity of an arcade, go and play the video games. You don't have to play the redemption games. Now, maybe you want to, and that's fine. But if you really want to see video games rise in prominence, rise in numbers, like arcade operators like me, we have to consider the numbers because that's what keeps us in business. And so if the video games start getting played more than the redemption games, then arcade operators would start buying more video games. Now, because that's a very almost nebulous sort of thing to organize, it's very difficult to make that happen. That's like shifting cultural norms and such. I understand that's almost a impossible task, but it's like realistically, that's what would make video games rise in prominence out there versus just hoping that arcade operators will buy it and they will come. Now, also this past year, we opened up an Arcade Hall of Fame, which you can find on the site here, which is right there with the Hall of Fame stuff. And so we have a couple of slides or slide shows. One is for game creators, like Nolan Bushnell, Ted Dabney, Eugene Jarvis, Yu Suzuki, Tomohiro Nishikado, Ed Logg, Dave Nutting, Toru Iwatani. Now, some of these names you might not know, but that's also part of the reason why we wanted to highlight them. Like, say, Dave Nutting. A lot of people have no idea who he is, but he created, games like Gunfight, which it was actually a title game, but he enhanced it to basically become a new game. He was one of the proponents of putting CPUs into arcade games, and so that changed everything. He developed the first Maze game, or maybe they call it the second. He developed Wizard of War instead, and he also had work on other games too. Or Ed Logg, the creator of Asteroids and Centipede and Millipede, Gauntlet. He might not be a household name, but he was highly, highly influential and important in the video game industry and stuff. And so we wanted to highlight those creators. We wanted to highlight particular games, like what was it that they did first. Like I was just talking about Gunfight, the first game to use arcade game to use a CPU, which would change everything. Death Race and Seawolf and Breakout and Space Wars. Now, it took a lot of time that I didn't always have to put these together. Doing the research and making sure we're getting all the facts right. But we are going to add more to this throughout the year. And so don't worry if you don't see stuff like Daytona USA on here yet. I actually do have a slide for Daytona USA sitting on my computer, but or maybe I did put Daytona on there. I can't remember. Oh, okay, I didn't yet, but we'll add more. Just be patient, and if you have suggestions as to what should be in the Hall of Fame, let us know. All right, let's finish this up with our top 10 posts and videos. And so last year on the channel, the quest to defeat the Obsidian monstrosity on Minecraft Dungeons Arcade. It's constantly been one of the most watched videos. Makes sense. Minecraft videos just get a lot of play on YouTube. It's always kind of shocked me a little bit as to how much legs Minecraft has had. When my oldest son, started to play that game, I thought he would, play it for a few months and then I'd never hear of it again. But nope, he still plays it to this day. So not many video games are able to do that now. I haven't seen that sort of play on my Minecraft dungeons, so oh well. But yeah, the Resident Evil 2 was, I think, it was definitely the most watched video of a video published last year. But we also have to thank the gentleman that sent us that footage, who's was his name up here? I can't remember. So I'm sorry. But yeah, that was not me shooting this video. It was a reader that sent it to us, and so we're very grateful to them for that. But our top 10 posts, the things that people wanted to read on the site. Let's start at the bottom. exa-Arcadia announces Data East Tattoo Assassins. So from what Eric at exa-Arcadia told me is that even internally, not everybody was convinced that Tattoo Assassins was going to be worth the effort, but it had such a strong reaction online, like a positive reaction online, that yep, they're definitely moving forward. Now, when is it coming? Don't know. There's some games that were announced by Exa that still haven't been released yet, even though they were announced like 6-7 years ago. So I know they're trying to get those things finished, but probably depends on different like sales data, demand, and such that they have coming in. Number 9 was Raw Thrills reveals Top Gun Maverick for arcades, which we already discussed. Number 8, LAI Games unveils Cyberpunk 2077 Turf Wars, also discussed, but I think just the attention to that came from the fact that, Cyberpunk 2077 coming to the arcade. Well, hey, I want to see what that's all about. And actually, that was in the top 10 of the most watched videos last year. But like I said, if you saw that video and you didn't see the newest version of the game from IAPA, please look that up. Atari's Missile Command returning to arcades with Missile Command Recharged by Alan 1 was number 7. I'm surprised that would have beat out like Cyberpunk or Top Gun Maverick or I mean, not Tattoo Assassins, it's Missile Command. You at least know what that is. Only hardcore arcade gamers will know what Tattoo Assassins is. Location Watch May 2025, surprisingly, was one of the most read posts of the site. Sega's MyMyDX is headed to Amusement Expo. Not super surprising that that's on here. It's just I would have thought that it would have been a bit higher on the list. Konami testing out Dance Dance Revolution Stomp Arrows at Round 1 USA. Also not a big surprise, although from what I recall, this is a redemption-only version of Dance Dance, or I should just say DDR. But we have no idea if that's still coming or if it'll be released beyond Round 1 USA, if it'll just be an exclusive to them. And then the top 3, taking a close look at Resident Evil 2 Deadshot on test. This is when it was on test in the UK in the summer. It did later come to testing over in the States. I can't remember where I last heard where it was seen, but as I always like to emphasize on any location test post, please remember the game probably will change, especially in this instance where this game may not come out until the end of the year. And they could change anything they want about it, whether it's the software, they can give it a totally new cabinet, who knows. But we'll have to wait and see. And then another My post, Sega details more on My DX USA release, because initially the number 5 one was, we didn't have a lot of information on it other than just confirmation that it was going to happen. But after talking with Paul Williams and some others at Sega, we were able to get some details that went into this post, and that became the number 2 post. And then number 1 was Bandai Namco reveals Wing and Midnight Speed Ignition, which, as of this recording, still is not available in Japan. This is essentially Maximum Tune 7, but we don't know what the status of this will end up being as far as a worldwide release. Now, before the pandemic, I remember Bandai Namco was saying, yes, Maximum Tune 7 will be happening, and it's going to be a worldwide release. But that was 7-8 years ago. A lot of things have changed since then. And so it's always possible that Namco Japan could change their minds, and this could just be like what happened with Maximum Tune 6, where, yeah, you could get it out west, but you had to import something and all that fun stuff. But anyways, that is 2025 in review. Thank you for sticking around. Apologies that the constant times where I've had to leave the stream, and especially at the beginning there. But yeah, 2025, I don't know, overall, I guess my impression is kind of an uneven one, unbalanced one, where, you know, there was lots of good things as far as new locations, new games announced, but then, you know, business not great at my own location and for some others, and some arcades had closed down. You know, we had some prominent people pass away, particularly with Sega. It's like even Nick, who wrote for the site here, was a big Sega fan, and so it's like I don't know what it was about Sega stuff there, but so yeah, just good and bad that came out of 2025. Really hope for the best in 2026. I mean, I think with some of these games that are on their way, I mean, I would love to see Wing and Midnight Speed Ignition get a release here in the West. Definitely looking forward to Resident Evil 2 if that happens this year, or if it happens at all. I mean, that's another disclaimer to put on any location test thing, is that sometimes there are games that you would think would pass testing and they don't. Several years ago, in I think in 2019, we did a story about Tetris Dimensions, a new Tetris arcade game, and it bombed on test. And so we got photos of it from Sarah over in Buffalo, New York, where it was testing, and then we never saw it again. And when I talked to Play Mechanics about it, who are the developers, they're like, yeah, we were shocked. We came across all these people that did not know how to play Tetris, and it was even though this was a simplified version of Tetris to play it for tickets, it didn't make money, and so they ended up canceling it. Now, would Resident Evil 2 be canceled? It seems doubtful, but I guess I would note that there would be certain FEC chains that would not touch this, like Chuck E. Cheese's. I mean, I would be absolutely shocked if Chuck E. Cheese grabbed Resident Evil 2. I highly, highly doubt that is going to happen. And, you know, that's a lot of... it's a lot of buyers. Now, would Dave & Buster's around one grab this? Probably. I think that's a pretty high probability there. But there might be some other family entertainment centers that don't see this as a family-friendly game and would not buy that. And so just its violent nature does limit how many sales it can get. And so it used to be, way back in the day, there was a rating system for arcades, the AAMA rating system, where you had green label, yellow label, red label. And I can't remember the last time I saw a label on a game. Might be Big Buck Hunter, where it has like a yellow label, which is like mild violence or animated violence. But, you know, it's like Resident Evil 2, definitely a red label game for lifelike violence and such. But still, doesn't really matter when we don't have the rating system anymore. Nobody cared anyways. And so, but, you know, here where I have a Luigi's Mansion and a House of the Dead Scarlet Dawn, actually last week I had a mom come in with a couple of her kids, and the boy, he might have been like 3 or 4. He was absolutely freaked out by even, I think, Luigi's Mansion, or maybe he saw House of the Dead with the zombies, but like his mom had to take him out and had to leave without spending all of her tokens because the kid just absolutely lost his mind because he literally thought zombies were going to come out of the machine and eat him or something. So yeah, there will be some locations that will not touch a Resident Evil game with a 10-foot pole. But anyways, that was 2025 in review. Thank you guys for watching. Thanks for putting up with me wandering away from the stream once in a while. And we'll see you next time. Yes, and here's to this year. Hopefully it doesn't suck. Hopefully it's better than 2025 was.